One of the most inspiring and direct public challenges to Donald Trump just arrived from a Reagan-appointed federal judge, and I cannot wait to hear what you think about it. My name is Brittany Page, and this is the Page Perspective. When the Reagan-appointed judges are giving this kind of rebuke, ruling that the Trump administration violated the First Amendment with their ideological deportations, it is a reminder that there are people out there who see what is happening and are ready to fight it. And sometimes it can get lonely when you look around and you see institution after institution capitulating. And to think about how the people who have so little are the ones fighting so hard, when the ones who have the money and the power are often not standing shoulder to shoulder with those who have the most to lose. But hopefully this gives you some hope to stay in the fight. Judge William Young, again, a Reagan appointee, issued a ruling in the case of American Association of University Professors versus Rubio. And this is a case that challenged the Trump administration's ideological deportations of non-citizens as violating the First Amendment, namely the Trump administration policies of revoking someone's visa or green card and deporting them if they criticized Israel, expressed pro-Palestinian beliefs, or criticized the foreign policy of the United States, like we saw in two prominent cases with Mahmoud Khalil and Rumeysa Ozturk, both targeted for their speech. Remember that video of Ozturk being kidnapped from the street that went viral, only for us to learn that this was because of an op-ed she wrote for a student newspaper criticizing Israel in support of the rights of Palestinians. I saw a clip recently of Jake Tapper saying that the Jimmy Kimmel removal was the most direct infringement by the government on free speech that he has seen in his lifetime. And I'm sitting here like, Jake, people were kidnapped from the street for writing op-eds about the genocide in Gaza. And I'm not trying to downplay Kimmel, which was in fact very serious when the government forces the removal of a TV host, of course, but we should also be concerned about the people who are being abused by the government who do not have wealth, do not have power, do not have well-known names and well-connected friends to boost their protection. And that's why I'm talking about this ruling today. I'm going to take you through some of the most powerful parts of this ruling because I believe it's important for us to sit with this. But this ruling actually starts with Judge Young featuring a threat that he received to his court. Quote, "Trump has pardons and tanks. What do you have?" The judge writing in response, quote, "Dear Mr. or Ms. Anonymous, alone, I have nothing but my sense of duty. Together, we the people of the United States, you and me, have our magnificent Constitution. Here's how that works out in a specific case." And then 161 pages. And we're going to come back to this threat because after 161 pages, Judge Young picks up this message to the person who threatened him and gives us all a nice little mic drop. But before we read that, some of the crucial passages here that we need to share with people in our communities, starting with the basic thesis here in the introduction that begins with a review of the First Amendment. Quote, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances," the judge continues. Quote, "This case, perhaps the most important ever to fall within the jurisdiction of this district court, squarely presents the issue whether non-citizens lawfully present here in the United States actually have the same free speech rights as the rest of us. The court answers this constitutional question unequivocally. Yes, they do. No law means no law," referencing the specific language in the First Amendment there. "The First Amendment does not draw President Trump's invidious distinction, and it is not to be found in our history or jurisprudence. No one's freedom of speech is unlimited, of course, but these limits are the same for both citizens and non-citizens alike." Now, I want to highlight how remarkable it is that this judge appointed by Reagan in 1985, who has been a judge for many decades, is saying that this case is perhaps the most important one that he's seen. That is how fundamental these issues are, how serious. For all of the people who carry their pocket constitutions and pretend to have such reverence for the document, they certainly seem to be missing the basics here. And after summarizing the lengthy period of weighing the evidence and the numerous pieces of evidence that he evaluated to come to his ruling, the judge writes, quote, "The Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, together with the subordinate officials and agents of each of them, deliberately and with purposeful forethought, did so concert their actions and those of their two departments intentionally to chill the rights to freedom of speech and peacefully to assemble of the non-citizen plaintiff members of the plaintiff associations. What remains after issuing this opinion is to consider what, if anything, may be done to remedy these constitutional violations." So again, violating constitutional rights. No question, purposefully. How Marco Rubio, who used to be so outspoken against Donald Trump, has completely sold his soul for power. What is in it for these people? Whatever he's getting is worth all of this, all of the damage that he's complicit in facilitating and inflicting on others. I think Rubio and Noem and Trump and all of these lawless cowards need to pay special attention to this paragraph. Quote, "Throughout these proceedings, the public officials have emphasized that the non-citizens at issue are present at our grace. They describe their presence here as a privilege, which can be revoked for almost any reason, or at least when we begin to feel we would not have invited them here had we known what they were going to say to us. This court, in part, must agree. Non-citizens are indeed, in a sense, our guests. How we treat our guests is a question of constitutional scope, because who we are as a people and as a nation is an important part of how we must interpret the fundamental laws that constrain us. We are not, and we must not become, a nation that imprisons and deports people because we are afraid of what they have to tell us." How powerful is that? I remember back in the day, in the days of, Christopher Hitchens, the height of some of these free speech debates with noted atheist Hitchens just wrecking these pastors or like mocking the death of Jerry Falwell. And we started to get a glimpse of these hypocrites, the hypocrisy from many of these conservatives then, who would often tell us that the answer to abhorrent speech was simply more speech. Then Hitchens would dance on Falwell's grave and Sean Hannity would lose his mind, but those were interpersonal petty squabbles. Now we're talking about actual First Amendment violations with the power of the state trying to use the threat of deportation to silence and revoke people's fundamental rights. And those same conservatives who told us the answer to speech that we disagree with is simply more speech are nowhere to be found. Or actually, they are loudly praising this lawless and unconstitutional abuse of power. Now, I really recommend that you read this entire thing. I think it's a good read. I think it's an inspiring read, and I will be linking it in the description as usual. But if this video is going to be the end of your hearing about this, then I want to leave you with just a few more notes here. There's a heading in bold, you'll see there, "He ignores everything," and this is about Donald Trump, and the judge writes, quote, "This is indubitably true. The Constitution, our civil laws, regulations, mores, customs, practices, courtesies, all of it. The president simply ignores it all when he takes it into his head to act. Now that he is our duly elected president after a full and fair election, he not only enjoys broad immunity from any personal liability, Trump v. the United States, thanks Supreme Court, he is prepared to deploy all of the resources of the nation against obstruction. Daunting prospect, isn't it? Small wonder then that our bastions of independent, unbiased free speech, those entities we once thought unassailable, have proven all too often to have only Quaker guns. Behold President Trump's successes in limiting free speech. Law firms cower. Institutional leaders in higher education meekly appease the president. Media outlets from huge conglomerates to small niche magazines mind the bottom line rather than the ethics of journalism. Now, thankfully, he gives a footnote reference there for the Quaker guns because I had no idea what that meant, but it's a term from our Civil War, logs painted black to look like cannons. But again, a conservative judge laying out all of the ways that Donald Trump simply does what he wants to do, regardless of the constraints of the law or Constitution or social expectations, and all of the ways that the systems designed to counter his lack of constraint instead surrender is something. I have no faith in any elected Republican, but we always hear the Democrats come forward and say that in private, Republicans are expressing their concern about Donald Trump. When will any of these cowards join Judge Young here in speaking plainly about what we all see? Now, we're going to finish here at the end with his ruling. The judge quotes Ronald Reagan. And I know you're thinking, Ronald Reagan, the man who created so many of the problems that we're facing today. Yes, that Ronald Reagan. I want you to think about how remarkable it is that a conservative Reagan-appointed judge who's quoting Ronald Reagan is writing these words about the threat of Donald Trump. Quote, "Freedom is a fragile thing, and it's never more than one generation away from extinction. It is not ours by way of inheritance. It must be fought for and defended constantly by each generation, for it comes only once to a people." President Ronald Reagan, inaugural address as governor of the state of California, January 5th, 1967. I first heard these words of President Reagan's back in 2007 when my son quoted them in the Law Day celebration speech at the Norfolk Superior Court. I was deeply moved and hold these words before me as I discharge judicial duties. As I've read and reread the record in this case, listened widely and reflected extensively, I've come to believe that President Trump truly understands and appreciates the full import of President Reagan's inspiring message. Yet I fear he has drawn from it a darker, more cynical message. I fear President Trump believes the American people are so divided that today they will not stand up, fight for, and defend our most precious constitutional values, so long as they are lulled into thinking their own personal interests are not affected. Is he correct? He then signs his ruling and gives this final message to the person who mailed the threat. Quote, "I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for writing. It shows you care. You should. Sincerely and respectfully, Bill Young. P.S. The next time you're in Boston," the postmark on the card is from Philadelphia area, "stop in the courthouse and watch your fellow citizens sitting as jurors. Reach out for justice. It is here in the courthouses, just like this one, both state and federal, spread throughout our land, that our Constitution is most vibrantly alive. For it is well said that," quote, "where a jury sits, there burns the lamp of liberty." This should tell you a lot about the threat that we are facing as a nation. That a conservative judge is writing 161 pages spelling out the lawlessness of the Trump administration, of ICE. I didn't even get to that. A whole section on ICE and masks and how deplorable it is that we're facing masked agents in the street, imploring Americans to not be lulled into a false sense of security, that this lawlessness will not come for them. Bookending the record here with a threat he received and a response to that threat. These are scary times. And that is all the more reason to ensure that you are getting involved, that your voice is heard, whether that is the upcoming No Kings protest on October 18th across the country, or volunteering your time at your local food bank, or getting involved in local politics, which is so important. There remains so much that we can and should be doing to support our communities facing fascism. I never thought that I would take inspiration from a conservative judge quoting Ronald Reagan at me, but I am. Because if he can get it, I believe many others who haven't yet are capable of getting it, and we need them in this fight. I'd love to hear from you on this. Please share your thoughts in the comments below or call and leave me a fewer than 3-minute voicemail at 202-656-1037. 1509 or send an email to info@thepageperspective.com. You can support my work, as always, by becoming a channel member. All you have to do is click the join button below for as little as $1.99 a month, or you can go to patreon.com/podcast. Be sure you are subscribed. It's free. It helps me a lot. Follow me on social media at Brittany Page, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads. As always, thanks for being here. Take care, and I'll see you next time.